So I remember when I sat with you at lunch and I knew about your story, but then you really filled me in. And I just left that lunch thinking, wow. I mean, it's amazing. So ever since then, I've been so excited to do a fireside chat with you. So thanks for being here. And we'll just kind of start off about what kind of family did you grow up in? And what was your life like as a child? What kind of family did you come from?
Well, first I'll have to preface this by saying that my wife's family are there to leave it to Beaver. Everyone gets along, everybody loves everybody, they're at all the parties, everything. My family, we're like Jerry Springer on steroids. And it is, and unfortunately, growing up, I unfortunately grew up, is that backfiring? But anyway, I unfortunately grew up with a story that is just way too common. It just way is. I'm the youngest of 8 kids. My dad was in the military. He loved the bottle. He was an alcoholic, abusive, but thank goodness he came to sense in life and got things together there at the end of his life. My mother was a registered nurse, and she ended up running a psychiatric ward, which probably was great for taking care of us 8 kids. But we grew up with nothing. We traveled all over the place, and so, I lived in Ramstein, Germany, to Newfoundland, to Washington, D.C., to what have you, but was able to kind of rest my hat in Illinois, Scott Airfield. My dad was stationed, and so me being the youngest, I had an opportunity to grow up at least more so in one spot than the other kids. But, unfortunately, it was a typical looking back, if you will. But, yeah, so I'm here, and I wouldn't change it for the world. I wouldn't change it for the world. I have no regrets. I wouldn't change it for the world. I think it's made me who I am and gave me the outlook and my weird, different outlooks that I have on life. I think it's all rooted in that.
Well, isn't that really neat looking back, as you're saying, and thinking about all of those experiences that you've had and how those implement into your daily life now? Do you see yourself where you're implementing the skill sets and things that you learned as a kid through those experiences that might have been trying or a little bit hard? And has it made you more empathetic towards others, do you feel?
Oh, absolutely. It set me on a mission, if you will, just to impact lives and to be a good steward and the blessings that God's given us. But at the same time, too, it ingrained things in me. And I think you had someplace on your questions about a first job or whatever.
Yes.
But it ingrained in me. Who could imagine a 6-year-old kid today going out and doing paper routes by himself? Who could imagine a 7, 8, 9-year-old kid standing on the street corners on a Saturday night selling the St. Louis Post-Dispatch, the Belleville News-Democrat, and the St. Louis Globe, and selling them till 11 o'clock at night and then being right there at 6 o'clock in the morning and doing the same thing? And I just thought that was normal. I didn't know I wasn't poor. I didn't know I wasn't supposed to work hard. I mean, it was just, that's what we did.
And so that was ingrained from you from a young age. And so did you go up to people's doors as your first job when you're that little and knock and did you have like a wagon full of things?
No,
magazines,
we'd strap them to the front of our bike. And so we'd go and we'd throw them in the morning, and then other ones we'd throw in the afternoon. And then I had another job in the morning. If you're not from up north or haven't been around the cold winters, and when I say up north, I'm a Texan. I've been here since 1982. I ain't going nowhere. But I used to shovel coal in the mornings, and we'd shovel coal, and you'd go down, and I'd get paid a quarter or 50 cents, and you'd shovel the coal in the mornings, because that's how there's a lot of widows that were on the street, and I had one in particular who was just impressed me so much throughout my life. I got paid in coffee and coffee cake, and that was the best deal I ever negotiated.
That sounds like a pretty sweet deal to me,
yeah.
Pun intended. So you're talking about your first job and all the things that you learned and your journey that you've been on through that. So I'm sure you've accomplished a lot in your life, as most of us here know, but what would you consider your greatest accomplishment, your professional accomplishment?
Staying in business, keeping the doors open, impacting lives, building teams and culture. I don't know if it's one particular thing from a professional, and I've been blessed beyond measure. I've developed some chemistries and some things that I have that most folks in here wouldn't have a clue what they are, but they're worldwide, and we do everything here out of Victoria, Texas. And so I think just the fact of staying in business and building a team and having dreams and having just having the ability to be able to impact and to do things. And so I don't know if it gets any better than that.
I would agree with that. And so to explain with people who may not know, can you tell me exactly what it is that you do?
Well, the Clean Corp company was my first company. And actually, we're in our 25th year. So
congratulations.
Thank
Woo!
you. Yeah.
That's amazing.
Yeah. And a lot of people don't know what we do, but we move matter out of place. And so I have a petrochemical, an oil and gas, and a power division. And in all of those facilities, the ability for them to be able to operate at the highest efficiency is worth lots of dollars. And so we go in and we make everything better. When systems foul up, we go in and decontaminate them from a chemical perspective, environmental. I believe we're shoulders up, if you will. But we make them better and we get them back to design. And so the difference between an oil and gas plant being able to run between 85% production or 98% production, millions of dollars a day. And so we're always critical path. We're always critical path because they come in and when they hand the unit over to us, they're going to give us a $500 million or $1 billion unit and give it to us for 24 hours. We make sure we give it back to them in 23. But that's what we do. And so we do that all over the world, and we're getting back. That was all pre-COVID. We're getting back. You know, COVID just 30% drop overnight, but we're okay and been okay. So that's what we do. I say we move matter out of place, we clean, and we take things down to parts per billion. And so it's exciting.
And you're talking about culture and everything that you do with that. What do you feel makes your company so good to work for? Because I know everyone I've talked to is like, it's amazing. It is not easy to get a job because people stay with you, and that is rare today. So you have some secret sauce with your culture. What do you think that is?
You know, we have a lot of things. We're an off-the-wall spaghetti bowl structure, without a doubt. And there's always things that I've wanted to do that, because you own it, you have the ability to implement it and do it. And I've always had a vision for a God family team in me. That's our priority statement. I wear it on my sleeve. I can't tell anybody else what to believe or not believe, but you know where I'm at. And so in that, because we're structured in an odd way, and you're right, it's extremely hard to get on at Clean Corp. It really is. And because we do things different. You know, a lot of companies will go out there and say, I want all my customers satisfied. I'm going, satisfied customers? I don't want that. So what? That's what all the Me Too's do. We live by two things: 100% positive customer perception and 100% conformance to requirements. And the reason we do those, number one, 100% positive customer perception, is I want our clients to perceive us in a way that creates the value for them. And it doesn't matter if we're out in the facility operations, in the operational facility. It doesn't matter if we're standing in line at HEB. It doesn't matter where we are. They need to know what our priorities are, and we appreciate the opportunity. And we have to earn it every day. Every day. And I kind of liken it to golf. Doesn't matter if you're Tiger Woods and you won yesterday. What are you doing for me today? And so it's, what are we doing today? You got to show up and play every day. And the other one is 100% conformance to requirements, because we live in a world that our folks make mistakes. People can die. And it puts the hair in the back of your neck. It'll stand up. There ain't no doubt. But in doing that environment, we focus on things that are different that most companies, because we have a major process that we follow, but at the same time too, it's all about handoffs. Who's handing off to me? What am I going to process it with? Who am I handing off to? And so there's things we develop. I don't have a vacation or a time off policy. People take off what they need, and you're going, that doesn't work. Oh, yes, it does. We have a way. And so there are a lot of things that we do that, and also too, I've been blessed to just build or to be part of creating an incredible team of individuals around me. And I'm that one that I know all the team members and know their kids and the new babies. And, you know, nowadays I don't have to do, well, I figured this out a long time ago. I think there's three things. I think you can be a great visionary, you can be great at hyper-focusing, and you can be good at everything in between. I have whatever ability to be able, from a vision perspective, to see that. I can get hyper-focused into the weeds. I suck at everything in between. So I was able to find people to surround me that be able to fill those gaps I just didn't have the capability and capacity to do, or maybe could have, but I also knew where my value was in other places. And so for me, being the non-chemist, spending my time in the lab, doing what all the expert chemists would told me I couldn't do, we did, and we've done.
Well, and right there, if you guys picked up on that, which I'm sure you did, that is a sign of a true, amazing, great leader, is that you realize your strengths and where you're good at, and you allowed others to surround you and support you where you didn't feel that you could be as optimal, or you felt like you didn't shine as much. And so that's a true leader. And I respect that so much, because it's not often that we hear that. And the way that your company's culture is, that is something. And that's why it's hard to get a job there, because everyone wants to stay. I mean, the stories you told me about if you have someone sick and how you treat that, I mean, it's just, that's how a company should do, is support people when they're going through difficult times and be there for them. And it's amazing.
What you're referencing is, I shared the story with you, our time off policy and the way that happened early on in the Clean Corp company. One of the fifth or sixth individual that I'd hired, been with me ever since, his wife came down with cancer. And it was tough on a small company, no doubt. We knew her and know him, no doubt. Well, he began a 5-year journey with her that she eventually gave up to the Lord. It is what it is. But it was in that process, it didn't take me long to realize, no, Greg, don't come to me and tell me that she has an appointment tomorrow, you have to do this. Just show up when you show up. I got the rest of the team together and said, guess what? Here's what's happening with Greg. We're going to have to pick up some slack. We're going to do that because it could be your turn tomorrow. But that's how we're going to do. Because Clean Corp is a company that they know all day. We eat steak at Clean Corp a lot. But no doubt, they know we can eat steak in January, but the world can throw us things. We might be eating beans in December, but we're eating beans together. You're not a number. And if you're part of this family, we're either going to succeed or we're just going to have fun failing, but we're going to do it together. So,
and I think we need a round of applause for that, because that is truly, truly something. And I, touching on those subjects that you're talking about, do you mind backing up a little bit about your journey to the job you had, and then your journey and that receipt you told me about? Because that has stuck with me. I think about that almost on the daily.
Well, yeah, I had, again, was blessed in that early age. I was working hard, always wanted to just be the best husband and the best dad I could be. I wanted to break a cycle that I grew up with, and said, that's what I'm going to dedicate my life to doing. And had the luxury of taking a company and expanding that company and leading that company to a pretty substantial base. And then the Austin market went to heck, and my wife and I got out of there with our shirts on, paid everybody every penny, did what I was supposed to do. Ended up running another company in Houston. I wasn't supposed to. I was just over there doing some ISO work and doing some things, and the company got bought out, and they asked me to hang around and run the company. Well, I did. I learned everything in the world how not to run a company from that experience. Ended up with a team, ended up taking a company, and in a period of 3 years, flipping that company and turning it around. And my first job, I kid you not, the CFO of the company came in and said, hey, by the way, if you got payroll tomorrow, it's $220,000, you're overdrawn at the bank, you got creditors coming in here, good luck, son, make it work. What? What did I do with this? But we did. We put a team together, we did that, turned the company around. Went to a board directors meeting one day, and they decided they wanted to get in water treatment. We were in the industrial industry, and they wanted to get in water treatment. I'm saying, no, steady the course. Look what we're at. Look what we're doing. We went from nothing to being a cash cow. Come on, let's go. They said no, and then one of the guys who I wasn't really fond of, who was very dishonest and no doubt ended up slapping his hand on the table and looked at me and said, son, you're going to do what I'm telling you to do. And I couldn't help it. So the smart ass in me, I couldn't help it. So I slammed my hand on the desk and said, oh man, I'm not going to do what you're going to tell me to do. I quit. And I got up and I walked out, and then I got in the car and thought, oh, now I got to call my wife. And so, but it was that journey home, because I had been working on, or in my mind, working on just a different type of a company that I could develop that would impact lives and that could do good things. And so on the way home from Houston, I stopped at a little store, and lo and behold, it was surely a sign from God, because they had on the bottom of that receipt, because ours, we have the God Family Team in Me that's now I own the registered trademark to, but it had God Family Me. And I saw that and went, oh, this is a sign. I've been working.
If that's not a sign, I don't know what is. You literally stop the gas station and it prints out for you to read. That's like pretty obvious.
So I did. So I stopped at the rest area north of Victoria, and I finished on the back of that little receipt, and I had some napkins and some other things, and I finished penning the concept that I needed to fill in some gaps on the business plan. And then I went home and told my wife, honey, I don't have a job. And we don't have anything. We didn't have much. Here's what I want to do. I'll never forget. And by the way, this month I'm celebrating my 40th anniversary Thank you.
Woo! Happy early anniversary.
But I look at her and I tell her, hey, here's what here's what I want to do. It's what we should do. She just looked at me and she grabbed my face, gave me a big kiss. She said, "You're crazy. This day is long, but I'm going wherever you go." And there we go. And so
and here you are.
Yeah, and that began the history, if you will. It's just been a fun run.
Well, and so talking about your professional life, your greatest accomplishment, what's your greatest, I feel like I know the answer to this, but your greatest accomplishment in your personal life?
Oh, there's no doubt it's family and the ability to have the stewardship and the blessings to be able to do the things that not only Clean Corp can do, not only the other companies can do, but Tammy and I can do. I never would have thought, and it's a weird world for me. I never would have, I didn't grow up with anything. And so a lot of it's self-taught, and you're learning and you're bruising on the way. But I never would have thought that I'd be in a position to be able to do things to impact lives. Not just writing the checks easy, and that sounds weird today's world. Writing the checks easy. It's the rest of the stuff, and it's dealing with individuals and listening and opening the door and just walking with them hand in hand. I have 16 people, and sometimes it fluctuates, that I have on my list that are folks on my text list that are folks that I typically put them on, or a few of them put me on. But they're folks that I just on a day-to-day basis. Hey man, happy today. I love you. Jesus loves you more. Or hey, how's it going? Or whatever. And it's just that contact and things. But just what a blessing.
It really is. It truly is. And so you're talking about all the things that you've done, accomplished, professional and personal. How would you define success for somebody who came to ask you, in this audience who's wondering, how do you define success?
Well, there's lots of answers to that. To me, I don't think it's a destination, it's a journey. I don't know really what success is I don't know how to measure, because I grew up without anything and struggled and thought, man, look at that nice car. I'd like to get one of those one day, or I'd like to do this. And finally one day I woke up and went, I can do about anything in the world I want. I can afford to do anything, and now I don't want anything. I was giving Melvin trouble here because I did wear my jeans with no holes in them just for Melvin. And Melvin, but thank you, and my socks match too. Yes, I am.
He's going to verify later.
Yeah. Yeah. So.
And so if someone came to you and asked the advice on how to be successful, what would your advice be to that? To someone who came and said, I noticed you're successful. What is the advice you could give to me to become successful?
Well, first and foremost, failure is not failure. To me, failure is not failure. My greatest failures have always been turned out to be the most productive or successful or whatever you may be. And I've never looked at failure as a bad thing. And I'm kind of in awe times when I see people get beat up by failure, or I don't know if it's just something in the DNA or whatever, or just how I grew up, but I just don't see failure as anything bad. I've always used it as a pebble or a stepping stone or what have you to go to the next thing. I'll give you a prime example of failure, okay? Great chemist buddies of mine, and in one of the products, doesn't mean anything to you, it's called DFD 120. And I had a person, the guy that used to work with me in that company in Houston, called me one day and said, hey, we're starting these power plants up all over the world. He said, the problem is it's taking us $1.5 million and taking us about 6 weeks. Is there any way you could come up with any other chemistry or methodology? And if you could, man, we'd love to hear it. Well, again, he's being cordial and nice. He's not really thinking I'm going to do it, I don't think. So I go back to the lab, and my wife will attest to this because I've always loved the days in the lab, and I'd go back to the lab and I'd start tinkering. And my wife would come up at night sometime and go, hey, here's some food, honey, and do you mind coming home tonight because you really aren't smelling really good and you need to take a shower? But I would go and I would work in that lab in a different spectrum of methodology, if you will. And so I developed a product called DFD 120, and it starts up power plants and has all over the world, period. And the 120, 119 of my formulas failed. They failed. It was the 120th one that actually worked. And so it was just that I'm going to keep going. And I've had people go, why didn't you stop at 100? I don't know. Stopped at 120 because we got there, because 119 was a failure by that measurement. So what did I learn from it? And so, those, and I have stories of those of other chemistries and things that y'all be surprised what little old Victoria, Texas does worldwide. And I made a choice a long time ago. I'm going to do everything from Victoria.
Woo!
This is home.
That's amazing.
And so I've made a conscious decision, and my daughter, who's now running a lot of things, we'll talk about that, but I've made a conscious decision. And so our folks, we fly out, we do everything we can. Victoria's home. And we go, it doesn't matter, but I think our farthest customers in Perth, Australia, we're just starting to get back to after COVID. But anyway, so yeah, there's a lot happens in little old Victoria.
So I really like the story, since we're talking about failures that turned to successes. Can you tell the one about the chemical that was made and then ended up thinking it wasn't good? You know where I'm going with this?
Yeah.
That's a really good one.
That's when it was Union Carbide had contacted us. We were doing some work over there at Carbide, and they contacted us and said, hey, we're cleaning this equipment internally, but we're using this very harsh chemical, the HCl, heated HCl, and it's eating up the equipment over time. And so as it does that, then obviously the life expectancy, the asset value decreases, and so there you go. I said, is there any way you could develop something that would allow us to clean these systems without tearing up the metal? Okay. So there I go to work. Go back to the lab. Did things the chemist said, no, you can't do that. No, you can't do that. We did. Finally did. That one, it actually was 310 that we did on formulas that didn't work. It's now called Safe Clean 3100. But here's the crazy thing. Is so we go through, we're doing the analytical, we do everything. Everything's working beautiful. To the last night where we're going out to the plant to do the final bench top with the plant. And get everything ready to go. I come in the office, the lab the next morning, and there's a mouse. And he's in the beaker. And he's alive. And it is hydrochloric acid. If I told you, and if there's anyone with a chemistry background, if I told you I could put HCl in your hand, it wouldn't burn you. If I told you I could put hydrofluoric acid in your hand, not burn you, you'd go, nah, can't be done. Stop by the office anytime, I'll show you. But it can be. But again, so here's this mouse that's alive. And I'm going, what is that? My brother-in-law, at that time, industrial hygienist, and he was the head of the Department of Energy's nuclear waste and diffusion, industrial hygienist by trade. So I called him and I said, hey man, what's up with this? What happened? How is this mouse still alive? It took him and some of his buddies a while to figure it out, but they were able to come back with an answer. And how cool is that? Because now you have a extremely aggressive acid that you're using in the presence of humans, and now by pure happenstance, it was not the goal from day one, but surely we created it to be safe to all intact metal, never to human tissue. And now it's safe to intact human tissue. And it was one of those you want to go, yeah, I meant to do that. No, I didn't. No, I didn't. But again, and so it's that trial and error of things. And we actually had a circumstance where it was one of the plants, I think it was, maybe it might have been Formosa, it was one of the East Coast, where you had an operator walking by one of our projects, had 40-some thousand gallons of material in it, a plug busts out of the back, sprays him. He is just covered in this 3100. Goes to safety shower, rinses off, goes in, changes clothes. The medical folks check him out on site, and he goes back to work. If that wouldn't have been for that, he probably wouldn't be here. We would have been just HCl. So,
I mean, these are great examples of try and try and try again. Failure isn't always a bad thing. It doesn't always mean you're failing. Sometimes, and most times actually, it leads you to where you didn't even know you were supposed to go, and it opens doors you didn't even know were waiting for you to open. So when he told me these stories, and now hearing you tell these again, it's really pivotal to your life, and to realize that failure is not always failure. If you can take anything away, which there's a lot of nuggets of knowledge in this, I think that's huge, because a lot of us can get let down. We can give up on hopes and dreams or what we're working on because we think, oh, this is hard, and I just keep failing. But really, that could be pushing you and leading you to a new formula of your life. You never know, right?
Yeah.
So I'm curious today, like with all the kids that are out there, and they're trying to learn about careers and working hard, and especially we have the university and the college here. where would you tell them to put their time as being younger and being, trying to grasp life and where they want to go? Since you are successful, what would be where you think they should invest their time in?
I think a lot of the youth and even adults is everyone always wants their own gig. Everyone always wants to do. Everybody's always got an idea, but I think that so many of them get stuck in this process of thinking I have to invent something brand new. Everything that I did invented, Song of Solomon ain't nothing new under the sun. Nothing was brand new. I've always taken something from somebody else as a resource or knowledge from someplace else, and you build on that. And so it is that. And I think the ability to surround, I would look for resources and mentors, period, that will work with you and that will walk with you. And I think the majority of the time, more people will walk with you than you think. And I've been blessed to have some good mentors in my life, but it's to look for the mentors and look for the resources, and don't necessarily try to figure out what it is you want to do in a specific product or service or whatever, but how do you want to impact? Where do you see yourself in that 20, 30, 40 years? Because from Clean Corp's perspective, a lot of people love to buy Clean Corp, and over the years, I've had lots of runs, and as long as I'm alive, and we're not going to sell it because it's not about, this is going to be funny, it's not about making money. I always love it when I go, for whatever reason, some of the colleges or universities or high schools, ever, they want me to come in and talk to their entrepreneur class or business class or their accounting class. The accounting class is the best. I love going there with the business accounting. It's the first thing I'll walk in and I'll say, hey, look, here's the deal. No matter what you've been taught, here, profit, don't worry about it. It doesn't mean anything. And they're, what? No, what? And I go, hey, let's look at it from a different perspective. And it really is. It's a perspective of how you look at it. It's not just a cliche or something that you say, but I really don't worry about profit. Never have and never will. It's a mathematical equation. I cannot change that. I can only change the activities that lead to that. So if we're focusing on those activities, and we'll maybe talk about Ed Deming a little bit, but if you focus on those activities, it puts everybody in a different mindset from a cultural perspective. What are we doing? We appreciate the opportunities the clients give us. You're 100% positive customer perception, no matter where we are or what we're doing. And if we do what we've agreed to do, we go up and beyond and exceed those expectations, we're going to make money. I don't worry about that. And you do. And so it's a different, and I have dear friends of mine who own great large companies, and we just have a disagreement on how to run business and have great debates, but I'm not the guy that's going to sit there in December and go, I need to make 4% more next year. Who am I going to cut? What am I going to do? I don't. We just maximize what we have, and we grow and migrate with that. Clean Corp didn't even have a salesman. People go, are you kidding me? We don't. I mean, and it is. It's off the wall, spaghetti bowl, but it's what works.
But is it working?
It works.
Exactly.
It works good.
And I think that's great advice for anybody. But, it is true. A lot of times when I've gone to the high schools or other places to talk, the first thing they ask is, hey, what's your net worth? I'm like, that's not what we're talking about right now. We're talking about the things on how to grow and what you should focus on in order to get to where you want. Because a lot of times if that's all you focus on, you lose sight of a lot of things that will actually help you get to that net worth and to make the money. And so when we're talking about this, we're talking about advice and mentors and things. You kind of mentioned the mentors. What is the best advice you've ever gotten and why?
There's those times in life that you, there's that aha moment that just smacks you in the head. I'm working hard. Clean Corp was up and running, had a long way to go, but we were up and running. And a very dear friend of mine, Roger Welder, and I have lunch on a regular basis, and Roger would always hear my frustrations, and I'd tell him this with excitement, this and that, and I'll never forget, because it was one day I'm talking away a million miles a minute, and Roger just grabbed my hand and said, would you stop it? And I said, stop what? And he said, you're trying to act like an entrepreneur. And I said, that's what I am. He said, no, you're not. You're a founder. You're a founder. You are a first-generation founder. You are creating something for legacy, for future. You're a founder. Act like it. That statement itself changed a large portion of my outlook on what I did, because I thought, wait a minute. Okay, I'm just building the foundation. I will never be here to see that last shingle on that roof. I'm building the foundation. Let me build the best one I can. And so it was that wisdom, because I thought from a different perspective. I didn't think about that entrepreneurial and what am I going to do and for today or tomorrow. It was like, all right, 100 years from now, they're going to go, hey, you know, old Pop, the white-haired fat guy, man, my goodness. You know, he did some good things. But it's that, and I think it was Roger, and that was a life changer, one of the life-changing things for me, no doubt.
And that is a great perspective to look at it in that way, and it really shifted your way of thinking. And then did that really help you start to focus more in on where you were going and what you wanted to do?
Yeah, because I said, if I don't build the foundation, nobody will. Nobody can. I'm the first, and if I don't, they can't. And I didn't want to cut anybody short because of, you know, again, my daughter and son and others, and it's not just Clean Corp, but the other companies. I just didn't want to cut it short. So I got to working on sustainability. What is sustainability? And I'm talking sustainability from the continual impact and operation of an ongoing enterprise, period. How do you do that? And so that's what I began to focus on. And I realized I didn't know a whole lot about true sustainability from that perspective. I thought it was fine, build a good company and hand it off to the kids and that's fine. Well, not what sustainability is about. It's always about family. Everything else will fall in afterwards. And so, yeah.
Well, and you've built a great foundation. It is really awesome to see what you've built and how your family's involved and your culture that you've created. And, you know, talking about people that you've met and advice, I'm curious, who's the most innovative person that you know? Because you're really innovative. Like, he's made all these crazy cool creations and done things people have never seen. So who do you find most innovative?
You know, unfortunately, we buried him 2 Saturdays ago.
Sorry to hear that.
No, that's okay. I've had 5 mentors that have walked with me. 3 of them are still walking, but that have walked with me. But the first one was a gentleman that you won't, but his name's Eddie Riviere. And he was from Union Carbide. And it was probably 3 o'clock in the morning back in 91, 92, and we're all sitting out in the smoke shack out there taking a break in the middle of a shutdown. And all of a sudden, some guy comes around the corner and goes, hey, you bunch of idiots, what are you doing here? And that was Eddie Riviere. For whatever reason, he ended up and come to sit next to me, and that began a journey of my #1 mentor forever. Eddie, when he passed away, Eddie was the corporate cultural director for Dow Chemical Worldwide.
Wow.
And so it was the culture that he had there from a local perspective that he implanted as Roger implanted founder. And culture came from Eddie Riviere. What is it? What are you doing with it? And he walked with me and just from day one, and he was the most energetic, just wonderful guy to be around. So, yeah, Eddie Riviere.
And that's amazing how you never know how a chance meeting will impact your life forever.
Yeah.
And so I'm curious with talking about your company and, you know, loving Victoria like you do, and where do you see Victoria going and where do you want to see? Like, what is in the next few years where you would like to see Victoria going, and what changes are you seeing that you are happy about?
Well, I hope Victoria, in my lifetime, and hopefully sooner than later, breaks out of the mold that I've seen them in. So I moved to Victoria from Austin, my wife and I, in 90. We've been here ever since. But Victoria's always been too small to be big and too big to be small. And I've always kind of felt like they were in that middle of that next, you know, what are we going to do? What's that next step, if you will? And I think Victoria today is in the best shape that I've seen it in ever. And I say that from a political perspective, from who's out there politically and who's in those positions, from a support perspective, just everything is coming together. And I know that, you know, I look at Melvin and Janie there, and they have been, they're one of my friend mentors. They don't even know that. But I've watched them, and I've watched them through the years.
They're amazing.
Yeah, they are amazing, and I've watched them through the years. And here, you know, when I first met Melvin, I mean, it's Melvin Locke, you know, and the fact that he said, hello, how are you? I mean, you know, those things make a difference, but when you're watching in individuals, then it surely does make a difference. So thank you, Melvin and Janie.
I love that. I've had so many people that have come up to me and tell me their first job was with them or how they've impacted their life. So to have you here on stage saying that as well, it's really special. And so now we go to the Q&A section because I know quite a few of you are going to have some questions. So if you could just introduce yourself and then ask your question. And raise your hand so that he knows where to bring the microphone.
No, maybe they don't have any. I can't hear.
Oh, it's not.
About you, as we've been friends for a long time, and I know your kids, and I've seen you like balance that family lifestyle with everyone around you. And what's your trick to that, to give us some hints for our future?
How do you balance your life because you're really good with your family and your career and everything that you do? What's your trick to that?
Well, I tell you, I don't think there's a trick, and I guess good question, because I'm glad I don't think there's a trick. And there's no doubt that in everything from my family life, I was the one and the only. I'd go to my boys' baseball practices. I'd go to the football. I've never missed anything with the kids. I drove 2 hours from Houston one night to see a Catch 'em Being Good doll or bear that my daughter got at school one day, and then drove back to Houston or whatever. But I tell you what, is that what I did, and my schedule was typical. I'd get kids, get everybody to bed, and it was 12, 1 o'clock. I'd get to bed. I was up at 4 or 5, and I did that for 20-some years, every single day, and never missed a beat, didn't think anything about it. Well, while that's good and great, and I'm always there's two things I took away from that. Looking back at it, if you're going to be present, be present. And not just in the physical. If you're going to be present, be there. You know, and to me, that was a big lesson to learn, if you will. So what was the other point I was thinking? What was the...
How do you balance it? What's your trick to doing all that?
The other part is that it was, you know, my life kind of changed since March of 2018, because again, I had some medical things that popped up that changed my life forever, and I still deal with and always will. But it was that I sat back, and when I had to tell my wife for the first, tell her, say, hey, this is what's happening, this is where we're going, it is what it is. And she was upset. Because it's like, I've shared you with the whole world, and now we're going to get some time, and you're not? I mean, really? And so it's fair enough. And so if I could do it all over again, I don't have any regrets. But when you say balance, I'll say this, Bill, I made it look like it was a balance. I paid a price. If I can, and I'm paying it now, and I will pay it, and it's costly, no doubt, from a personal perspective. But I'd do that different, and I would caution that in all of us, and entrepreneurial and founders and what have you, we want to do all those right things to continue to grow. And but on the other hand, there is a price for it, because you're giving up something. If you ask about what's success, it's what you're willing to give up. That's it. If you see what you're willing to give up, if you're willing to give that up, go for it. But I'd do it different if I could.
Well, and someone recently told me you have to learn how to say no. And I think as an entrepreneur and somebody that does a lot of things, and correct me if I'm wrong, but it's really hard, because you're always like, I got this, I can do it all. And I think it's about that balance, is that a lot of times we make it look really eloquent and like we're gliding through, when really we're just juggling a lot of things, you know? And so I do like your advice, is that to each their own, right? And figure out what works for you. And also success is what you deemed it as, you know? And I think that's really important to remember. But it is awesome that you had time with your family and that you did all that. So that's amazing, because I know that is something we all really do want to figure out, how to have more time, but how to also achieve our dreams. And I think that's something a lot of us are always trying to figure out. Then it seems right when we have it figured out, something new comes in the mix. So we're figuring something else out. Is that mostly what life is? We're just figuring things out?
Yeah.
But we have these chats to help us figure it out faster, and Innovation Collective to help us get there, right? So another question. Who else has a question?
So Robby, Terry Moten. And the question I have for you is, so I know your daughter is in your business. For example, my dad has a business, successful business. I don't want any part of it. My sister doesn't want any part of it. I see more and more parents who have businesses who had aspirations that their children were going to come in it, and the children don't want any part of it. So for somebody that is new in business and would love to kind of groom children where it can be a generational, familial business, what advice do you have for those parents where they're not kind of forcing their kids in the business, but they are, how do you get them to want to be a part of it?
Well, no doubt, what a blessing. Both of my kids work in the Clean Corp company, and Casey works in others that work in both of them. It was not a rite of passage for either of them. Casey actually was working with the tourism here in Victoria, and Casey came to me one day and just said, "Hey, Dad, what would you think if I came to work at Clean Corp?" And I said, "Why?" And that's what I wanted to know. I said, "Why?" And she said, "Because I've just watched you through the years, and you're just having fun, and you seem like you have a good time, and you provide for Mom, and you do cool things in the community. I just want to be a part of what you are." And my son did the same thing. Just recently graduated from A&M Kingsville and loves chemistry, thank goodness, and other things. He's not going to write an English paper for you. But for both of them, and funny you asked that question because I've had other people ask that, and I really have seen folks that have really kind of groomed their kids to take that business over, and I think that's too much. I think they have to make a choice on their own. It's all about choices. They have to make that choice, and I really never thought about it until I guess Casey was in high school, the older one, and I started thinking, I ain't getting any younger, what am I going to do? And it was really the first time someone came and said, "We want to buy your company." And we're going home and telling, "You want to sell the company, Tam? Look at all that, you know." But and I think it's from them witnessing your experience. No, I don't think a child wants to say, "I want to jump in the middle of this horrible environment or this hard environment." I just think they want to be a part of something good. I hope that helps.
That was a great question and a great answer.
Yeah.
Another question?
Nancy Peters, having taught both of your children at St. Joe, I would like to say I remember how important your trip from Houston home for your daughter was that day because she talked about it to me. That was a big deal.
I'm glad she remembers because I do.
Well, she remembers. And no, Connor is never going to write a paper. But he showed so many wonderful skills in journalism, and you could see his wanting to be successful in the different jobs that he had. So obviously, he's watched you and Tammy, and he has learned a lot.
Thank you.
I love that. I mean, it's amazing when your kid's teacher shows up to see you at Fireside
don't
Chat,
get no better than that.
and then and that's when you hear these things that your kids say about you, or they're watching you, and even your daughter coming to you and saying that she's watched you throughout the years. Kids are very perceptive, and they're always watching, and they hear everything. So it's really amazing to see how much that meant to your daughter and your son, that they both picked up on what you were doing. And not only your family, I'm going to tell you, I don't want to get tears in my eyes. This community, when I told them that you were speaking, everybody stopped what they were doing and they would say, "He is a fantastic man. His family is fantastic. He is such a good person."
Oh, it's too kind of you.
And that's just, I was taken aback because person after person, when we were talking about the chat, told me that. And so I just want you to know that you do matter. You've made an impact. And I know you know these things, but I always feel it's important to tell people your hard work and what you give back and everything that you've done, it means a lot to people in this community and beyond. And so we have time for one more question.
I'm going to stand up just because I couldn't see your face this whole time. But just want to thank you for just the force of nature you are in our community for charitable causes. And have the question for somebody that just kind of taking off in a professional realm, like how do you make those choices on which philanthropies, which charities you were going to support? And when do you start doing that? Is it from the very beginning? Did you set a goal and here's whenever I'll start to do those sorts of things?
Well, a great question. You have to actually give my daughter Casey the bulk of the credit for, because for many years, again, I have a big heart, no doubt. I think I'm dead broke. I'm just trying to be a good steward of God's money, no doubt about it. And so there was a point in time when Casey first came to work, which was a challenge to begin with, because she'd come in and say, "Dad, why are you doing that?" Or "How'd you do that?" And I'd go, "I don't know, I just do it." "Well, no, how'd you do it?" "I don't know. I invented it. I don't know." It's difficult to pass that on. But Casey came, and I didn't realize it. And after Casey being there the first year, she finally came in and said, "Dad, Do you know that we're supporting over 300 organizations across the state on an annual basis? And I said, hey, all right. And she said, no, not all right, Dad. She said, you need to think, let's think about it from another way. And she goes, of those 300 organizations, what if we did 30 and we concentrated our impact on individuals so we could actually, instead of getting someone a truck or giving them $5,000 for like an operational expense, what can we do that we can go in that's program driven? What can we do that we can truly see an impact? So I said, great, you are now officially in charge of all of our money that we give away. Put yourself together, a team, and go. And so they do. They do that in January every year. They have a T3 team they go through, and we get applications, and they go through that process. And she still gets a little mad because sometimes I'll bump into somebody, and I can't help it. And they'll go, hey, by the way, we got this event coming up next week, and I'm going, or next month or whatever. And I go, oh, have I done that in the past? Yeah, and we'll do it again. And then Casey, Dad, don't do that. Yeah, you know, but they go through a methodical process of an application, and they're looking at impact. And then we stay in touch. And it's not just the money. Our folks at Clean Corp and other companies, they're there from their time too. They're out there, and Habitat is, is one of the favorites that we do, but they'll go out there and they're swinging hammers. They're doing that. And so, yeah, that's it goes through a process that's very methodical, but it's focused on impact.
And I love that, focused on impact. And I love that there's a vision in how you do that and how you execute that. And your daughter's doing an amazing job. And so I just want to really thank you for being here, taking the time to do this. I know that this impacted me greatly, as well as I'm sure all of you. I took so much away from this. And just thanks for being in Victoria and investing in this community and being here. We all really appreciate you. And we're all going to give you a great big hand because I appreciate you, and I know they all do too.
Thank y'all.
Thank you so much.